Well, maybe we can try it like this.
I can lean in. Both of us, I think, have the propensity to be loud.
So the idea is we want to at least see some like seismic activity on the right side for our speech. I think it looks like
we can do this.
It looks like it's working. All right, we'll just get really close in here. All right. So I heard some concerns from your staff as we were arranging the interview that it could be a waste of your time. What exactly? How do you define a good use of your time? What do you think is a waste of time?
That is a great question. I mean, the very idea of using time, right? Like, you sort of commodified it. And I've got this sort of, like, mental construct around, like, time is meant to be spent. There's another great little metaphor. It's about, like, it's about being productive. It's about having some sort of thing you can show for your time at the end of it. And you got a note from my staff. That's great. Bastards.
Wow, that's actually really interesting, dude. That's totally true. That we want to like purchase something with our time. That's really interesting. Do you believe in time, like as a thing?
But I'd say I believe in time, like time as another thing. Like, I don't know that it's a like a discrete property. Like, you could. Okay, I should lean in. Should I lean in?
Oh no, I was just saying hey to my future self.
Okay.
Sorry, go on.
Hi, future self.
Looks like we believe in time.
It would appear, yes. We certainly act as if we do.
right. But I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm trying to think of how I would respond to that question. I think it's just mostly a byproduct of not everything not happening at once. There are lots of philosophers who said something to the effect of like time is just a byproduct of motion. I don't know if I believe. I don't believe you could like locate time and then like get a chunk of it or something, and like manipulate it.
Right.
But I certainly act as if it has meaning.
I guess that's probably smart.
I don't know about. I mean, it sort of depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right?
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's interesting. Are you a pragmatic? Is that like, do you view yourself? Whoa, sorry, cutting my chicken. I'm shaking the table. Do you view yourself as like a pragmatically oriented person?
I mean, it's sort of as a general rule, I describe myself as a philosophical pragmatist, which is I'm less concerned about the capital letters ultimate nature of reality and more about how to move through it in a way that allows us to like be loving or like basically make our way through it. Like, is this all a game that some demon is playing with my perception? It's like, I mean, possibly, and like I don't have any indication that that's the case.
so it's probably not worth it.
So I'm going to live as if that's not the case until I find some data that's like, maybe believing this would help you to get through the world, Tom.
Yeah, right. That's pretty cool, actually. So what do you want to accomplish? I mean, that sounds wrong. I don't want to say it that way, but like, what do you want from life? What do you appreciate about life? What do you want to pursue in life? What do you think is good?
Like the three things I guess that would come up for me are like love, relationship, and God. And I see those as being like interlinked. So I think for me, like pursuing, trying to be loving, trying to experience love, whether as the giver of or the receiver of, and that might be the receiving from other people. But I think most of the time, or all the time actually, it's receiving from God. We just have to be open to it. So I'd sort of say like love, at the risk of sounding like a total freaking hippie, right? Like I'm peace and love, man, peace and love.
Well, it seems like they're on the right track,
Yeah.
I don't know, though. I don't know. Life seems really, like, interesting and mysterious to me sometimes. Like, come on.
We're recording a thing, man.
Yeah. Can't be dropping silverware.
Cutting chicken. Having earthquakes.
Right. This is very serious. Very serious.
This is a productive use of our time, darn it.
Well, yeah. Actually, that's so interesting. So, like, all right, here's the thing that I never do right, is that I never bring my goals and what I want, like, into the moment of what I'm doing. You know what I mean? How can we make your life goals active in this interview?
Damn. I mean, I think the fact that I think the very fact that you sort of invited me here and was like, let's do an interview, and I'm like, about what? And it's like, I don't know, just about like life and stuff. It's kind of like, sure, I'll show up. I'll have that conversation. That sounds fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So, I mean, I think that's already starting to make it like, you know, if we're talking about like relationship, like I love you, John, and so I showed up and did a thing, even though I have no idea what we were going to do. So,
love you too, man. Yeah, thank you for. You're always the one who shows up for my weird antics.
Ridiculous schemes.
Yeah, I actually brought blindfolds, you know, just in case.
Oh, hella. Okay, just in case we need those.
Yeah, if you feel. You know, the
Let's
urge
break out the blindfolds,
to be
man.
blindfolded, yeah.
Altered perception.
right.
You don't need drugs, man. You just need a handkerchief.
You want to do it?
I don't know if I want to do that thing. Let's keep talking.
Well, there's a lot of options, yeah, but no pressure. There's a lot of options, man. Everybody's doing it. You can get up this way or that. I'm sorry. So, yeah, you know, this is my first interview. So I didn't feel like very relaxed, I don't think, at first. Mm-hmm. I still feel a little conscious of the camera and stuff. You want to do a relaxing exercise?
Let's do a relaxing exercise.
Do you know any?
Oh, right. What I think, I mean, this is very camera conscious, but like, it's just us sitting here like meditating for like 2 minutes, and just sort of like people watching like us sit silently.
It's their choice. We're not making them, right? And in the modern age, they can skip ahead in the video, I think.
Right. So for those of you who are watching at home, you might want to skip ahead as we meditate here for a minute. Like I'm gonna say like, you know, like a 60-second break here. So just jump right on ahead if this is uninteresting to you. Otherwise, join us, please.
Yeah.
All right. Time it. So let's just take a minute. See if we can settle into the space a little bit.
Oh.
And good. I don't know if I'm less camera conscious, but I'm more relaxed.
Yeah, I feel actually way better after that. How was your meditative experience?
Good. I don't know. So I mean, it's funny, like, and this is something that I experienced, like, as a worship leader. Like, it's this very different experience when you're, like, trying to, like, make sure that the clock is up right. So you're like, okay, I'm meditating, and I've also sort of got an eye open, like, looking down at my phone, like, okay,
right.
We got a minute. I wish I were better at, like, internal timing. I rely on a clock a lot for that.
So that was kind of, you felt the simultaneous pull of the circumstance you had to manage while you were meditating?
Yeah, and I have that, like, when I'm doing worship leading, like when I do, like, Taizé style stuff, or the kind of contemplative thing. Like, often because I'm in charge, it's like, or because I'm in charge of sort of leading the worship, like, okay, and now we sink in, but I'm also kind of aware of the fact that I need to be done in about 8 to 12 minutes, or otherwise people get, like, antsy, or, like, people have shit to do, John.
Right. No, that's the funny thing, yeah, if you'll excuse my language, I also lead worship, you know, and so I'll be like, well, I'm in charge, so my determination is to not give a fuck, you know? Like, since I'm in charge, that's the right thing, that's what I'm going to choose. But I know some people aren't always happy with me about that, you know?
That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm in charge, and so I say, let's not care. Let's not care.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting, but I totally understand that thing, though, you know? I totally get I mean, I was like thinking of lines to say, you know, for the interview while I was meditating. I sort of became conscious of that, you know. So it's interesting, you know, like just how much like I wanted to be clever and stuff like that, you know? But I've been thinking about this, how like I think we do our best when we're just like totally relaxed and not trying. So it's this really ironic thing where I'm constantly like trying, but trying is the reverse of what can actually
you're so on point, and I think you've told me before, John, something like the time has come for us to stop being clever.
That would be cool.
Because like cleverness is, I know for me, and I would also suspect for you, like it's in some really important way a mask or a defense mechanism. Like it's a way to sort of separate ourselves, because you have to try at cleverness in some really important way, right?
Yeah.
You
know, like bald eagles, in their mating processes, bald eagles fly as high as they can into the sky, and then they basically they just fly really high. I don't really know the details. I'm not like a bald eagle expert, but basically they are trying to demonstrate, their prowess. I think that happens with a lot of like creatures and stuff. And this isn't sounding super articulate. A lot of creatures and stuff, like trying to show their prowess, man. But at any rate, regardless of my lack of prowess, it's interesting. It's just very interesting because like I find that like conflicts with my goals, And I'm constantly, man, like trying to justify my worth as a human being and stuff.
That is a self-defeating exercise.
Yeah, in ways that I hate. I'm trying to make myself a likable person
by doing stuff
things
that you don't like.
I hate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why do we do that?
This is your interview. Sorry. So
no. I mean, I think it's a conversation. I know I do that all the time. I know I do that. Like, I'm trying to think of. I mean, I think like for a long time I'd built an identity around being like intellectual prowess, or sort of like being the smartest person in the room, or like having myself be the intellectual, or that guy sort of be the way I constructed my identity, right? And like the more I've given that up and been like, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room or the best, artist in the room. I mean, it's hard. Yeah,
and I have to be the smartest person in the room.
No, believe me, it's still an operative paradigm. Like, I'm not saying I figured that out. But when I let go of that and
Are you trying to be the smartest person in the room?
I'll fight you. I'll fight you with my mind, man.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No. I think I'd come to the end of the thought, The more I let go of that, the more authentic I find myself to be.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be really awesome. I let go of those kinds of things. So there's something else I was thinking about too, that what I wanted to do in this interview also was like try to think about like what I don't know how to like phrase it. Let's see, like what is like beneficial for Tom, what's good for Tom, how to think about the other person and be in the mindset. It's actually funny as I'm starting to think about this. I really don't do this very often. Especially like in front of I'm out of frame. Especially in front of a camera, or people who I want to impress, and all these things. I lose, which is very often. I lose my ability to think about the other person's needs first, And so basically, what happens is my addressing of their needs just becomes. Like, it's just like a tertiary thing for my own self-glorification,
Oh, God, yes.
And so I'm trying to, start seeing if I can focus, especially in, like more challenging circumstances like this, I guess, on the other person, what I want for them in the interview and stuff like that. Anyway, so that was just a thought. Oh, yeah. So I guess the point was I thought it would be good to try to get to, like, who... Tom Emanuel, this is my idea of what's good for a person. Who Tom Emanuel is, like at the core of you, like who you are, like since you're a child, basically, you know what I mean? And like how to facilitate that person's existence, basically.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what I want to do. But I only said the plan. I didn't really execute it.
Well, I mean, man, I just think sitting down and talking about this stuff. I mean, because like the very question, like, what do you consider your goals? That's the thing we don't ask each other all that often.
Yeah.
Like the very act of sort of orienting us toward that. Like I feel pretty comfortable with you to like talk about whatever, or to be honest about that. Like I mean, I spent today like putting together my Midler review. Right. For those of you at home, that's a thing we do in seminary in the middle of our second year. Where they basically ask us, who are you and what do you believe, right? And so, like, I do it in the form of storytelling. And so, like, I was actually spending a good portion of today, like, back with the guy Tom was, or the kid Tom was, when I was, like, 5 and 8 and 11.
Oh, good
and, like,
timing,
timing. It's great timing. And, like, who is that person and what is really important to him? And I think at the end of the day, like, two of the biggest things for me are, like, I need spaces where I can be creative and be appreciated for being creative. I think there's ego in that, but I also think there's, like, I think human beings have a deep need to be loved. And, like, I see creativity as both an act of love and something that sort of reaches out for connection.
Yeah.
So, like,
it's a way to express yourself, and so that person can be embraced, I guess, right?
And also, I mean, I think if you're doing it right, it also points at the one who made us, the one who gives us, the whole sort of the God picture.
Cool.
But I think, I mean, I'm learning more and more about myself, like leaning into that identity and really, like, and being willing. So, like, here's the thing, John, is that, like, part of the reason I had a problem with being creative was because at one time I put a lot of my self-identity around being the best artist or the best singer or the best, like, writer in the room, and then had experiences where it's like, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was, or I didn't get the kind of validation that I wanted from other people, and so, like, set that piece of my identity aside and was like, okay, I'm gonna go do these other things for a while that I know I'm good at, or I know I'm really good at, that I can, or I can get validation from them, basically, and have a sense of purpose. And part of my journey is
socially sanctioned. Also,
right,
that's
socially sanctioned. Exactly. And sort of finding my way back around to, like, oh, artist, poet, writer, performer. Those are things that are not. It's not just about validation. It's not just about, like, what do you want to do with your life, but, like, you have to do those things in order to be whole. Otherwise, you actually, like, it's self-destructive not to do that.
Yeah.
And so learning to embrace that and be like, I am good enough, actually. I am good enough at writing or at singing or whatever to do it, and to, and to go out and do it in public, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
I find that scary. I think you're much braver on that front than I am. You're always, like, ready to go out there in public. I'm like, my paper's shaking and stuff, a little baby about it. Yeah, what's performing like for you, just out of curiosity? It seems like you really embrace that and like that. What's the experience like for you?
I mean, so there's this concept, and I don't remember who talked about it, but it's like in the flow where you don't have a clear perception of, like your perception of time actually sort of breaks down in some important way, and so when I'm preaching, for instance, and I think of that as a kind of performance, like I don't remember what I've said, and I don't necessarily know exactly where I'm going. Or when I'm singing, I don't have a clear recollection of, like, oh, I did this thing, I did this harmony at that part of the song. Like, there's a feeling of almost, it's this weird simultaneous mystical thing where I'm both not myself and also totally myself. And I'm not, like, there's no self-consciousness about it, which is usually in my life there's this really strong sense of self-consciousness, like there's a camera in my head looking at me and recording everything. Right. And when I'm performing, I don't tend to have that.
That's cool. I mean, when I'm performing, that's when it's like, I become super self-conscious, always, even still leading worship at my church.
Really?
Oh yeah. For sure.
And for me, like, the self-consciousness turns on immediately once the performance is over. So, like, I remember once when I was, like, in 6th grade, I performed a flute solo, or a couple of flute solos for my, like, middle school band concert, right?
Nice.
And I screwed up part of it, and, visibly screwed up and got frustrated with myself on stage. And people came up to me afterwards and told me, which I'm sure, like, the vast majority of the thing was great or well played or whatever, but, like, I remember people coming up to me and saying how great it was and how, like, I wanted to hit them.
You just hated them?
Like, I hated those people. They're like, do not talk to me. Even when I did well at things, let alone when I did, like, when I considered myself as having screwed up, and then people would come up and say, oh, you were so good, I love your work so much, and it's like, no, please don't talk to me, I can't deal with you, oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm terrible, I'm shit, this is shit.
You're right. I totally get that. Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. That's really cool. So for you, performance is a way to, like, it's a way that you exist, like, naturally outside of a self-conscious state, I guess. And
it is, actually. And I find that space, especially in music, or I'm finding it more and more in spoken word stuff, so whether it's preaching or in poetry. But yeah, it's a place where I could, at least in the moment of performance, I'm fully alive and not, like, self-conscious. It's about the music, and it's about the one who gives us music, if I'm doing it right.
Yeah, that's cool. That's super, super duper cool, man.
Thank you.
What are some of the, like, most memorable, I guess, like, what should I say? How about this one? How about phases of your life? I bet you, if you're like me, you've chopped up your life into like a few phases.
Yeah.
What were those phases?
So there's like childhood, which ends at 11 with my parents' divorce, and like that's just like, you know, sort of this inchoate like sunny afternoons and summer days and no responsibilities and Legos and beauty and wonder. And then there's like teenagehood, which is basically me being the most socially anxious kid you have ever seen in your life.
Really?
So much social anxiety. Oh my God. Where I still did, like, I would perform in drama and music and art and do these different things, but like, asked me to hold a conversation with a stranger, it was terrible. And that was like, I didn't feel awkward when I was a kid. Like the kid stage of my life, like adolescence was defined by a feeling of just like profound awkwardness and not belonging.
God, I think that's common.
I don't think it's uncommon. There's nothing surprising in that.
Yeah.
I would say the next major phase of my life was actually during my so the first year of my university career, I was still sort of in like adolescence, like that sort of like self-conscious mode. Then there was like a 3-year period where like I was the activist, and I like lost 100 pounds because I switched to vegetarianism.
Right.
I cut my hair. I moved away from doing artsy stuff and into being like a social justice activist and a community organizer.
How do you look back on that?
It was really important for who I was. And for who I am today, but it sort of got subsumed once. What it allowed me to do was it allowed me to get into church. Actually, like it was the entry point by which I found church, or one of the entry points was like, oh, church is a place where we can actually try to do this work in the world of creating a better world for all our brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And that sort of morphed into the religious phase of my life, where I was really highly involved in my local church community. And then going into ministry. And I would say that's sort of the phase that's been continuous since then, of sort of walking into that religious identity, walking into that faith identity. And so that pulls together sort of the creativity of my teenage years, and I've left a lot of the social anxiety behind, praise God. And then pulling in the social justice orientation of my early 20s, but like giving it a faith orientation rather than just being about like sort of building utopia on earth. So that's sort of where I am right now, and I'm starting to like the pendulum swinging back to creativity lately, so that I'm figuring out how to do religious work and ministry in the context of being a musician, poet, playwright, that sort of stuff.
That's pretty awesome. That gives me actually a really cool, interesting picture of Tom Emanuel, how your life's taking shape, how you are, who you are, and also I feel like I have a sense of like where you're going, you know, as a result of that. So your childhood like ended at your parents' divorce, you felt like, right? Was that a pretty shitty experience for you? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, I was just talking about this in my Middler stuff. Like it was sort of, I think it was sort of the trigger that hit my like not belonging, not good enough buttons.
Gotcha.
Like, I think I held myself responsible for it in some important way, and, like, my home never felt like at home. Like, for the 11 years leading up to it, like, you know, mom and dad had been together, and it was sort of, looking back on it, it was sort of this idyllic existence, right? Like we are when we're little kids, like, without the responsibilities, we don't have any knowledge of suffering or hurt, and, like, my perception of my family was as this unit, as this sort of idyllic unit, and following that, I feel like, that's when my social anxiety really started to kick in, and puberty didn't freaking help, man. Right? Jesus Christ. I started, that's where my, like, difficulty in relating to people really started, because I'd always been, like, a little bit, like, sort of intellectual and, you know, kind of quirky and nerdy and that, but, like, and I think it was just a confluence of events. Like, I point to the divorce as sort of the flashpoint, but also, like, the fact that going through puberty and becoming an adolescent and, like, dealing with all that bullshit, I'm sure contributed to the sense of not belonging and not good enough that sort of became, like, my intrinsic issue, which I'm still working through. Is that, like,
is that about basically, like, girls and that kind of thing? Is that what adolescence brought on?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, especially about romantic relationships. But I think even deeper than that, like, just a profound sense of, like, I have to justify my existence, right? I have to justify my existence by being good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, whatever.
Right. Yeah, that sucks. When that weight hits you, it really, really kind of sucks, you know? Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Yeah, why does that exist? Why is that a thing, you know? We should get rid of that.
We really should, though.
Yeah.
I'm trying, man.
All right, well, let's see. So I had some other questions here, too. Oh, yeah. I thought of this one kind of while you were talking, so I'm sorry about that.
Hit me.
I want to try to listen as actively as possible, but... So what are like the Hollywood moments of Tom Emanuel's life? Or like if your life's gonna be like Hollywood story, be like, oh, classic, you know, stuff going on there. Or it doesn't have to be classic, but whatever, you know, the great movie moments.
Yeah, the great movie moments. I like that. So one of them is, and I always point to this, is I was involved in organizing a youth prayer meeting on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard much about it. I've just heard you only mentioned it one time. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go on, brother.
Cool.
No,
that's cool.
But so we'd spent months preparing this thing, and I lived in an intentional community with native and non-native South Dakotans on the Pine Ridge as we prepped for this meeting. And the
wait, people maybe they don't know what Pine Ridge is though. It's
sure.
Like pretty.
I should explain that. So. Pine Ridge Indian Reservation is an Indian reservation in South Dakota, which is where I'm from originally. And the gathering that happened was called Taizé Pine Ridge, and it was put on by the Taizé community in France. They do these youth prayer gatherings for young people 18 to 35 all over the world. They call it their pilgrimage of trust on earth. And usually they do them in places like Rome or New York or Prague or Mumbai, like big cities. And this is the first time they'd ever done one in a little place like Pine Ridge. And literally, like, it was on the edge of the Badlands. So, like, there was no town. It was out in the middle of nowhere. And I was involved on the leadership team for helping materialize this crazy meeting. I call it, like, my Woodstock experience, right? Like, a bunch of people, like, setting up camp and creating an experience out of nothing, basically, out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember, so there's this moment, so the first night of the meeting is characterized by young people, native and non-native, living together and eating together and working together and especially praying together. And so we're in this natural amphitheater on the edge of the Badlands of South Dakota, right? And it's like Friday night. And the moon is just starting to rise. And we start singing this song that's in Lakota. And the title is Wakan Tanka, which means God, or Great Spirit, or Great Mystery. And the lyrics are translated, I do not understand your ways, O God, but you know the way for me.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm sitting here singing this song, which has become the theme song of this meeting, with 500-600 other young people sitting next to my new native friends. I'd never had native friends before. I'm living in South Dakota. I'd never had native friends. And I'm sitting next to them, and we're singing this thing. And this is maybe a year after I've gotten really involved in church for the first time. And so I'm finding my spirituality and getting to know God. And, like, I'm just bawling my eyes out. Like, this is peak spiritual experience of my life. This is a moment where I go from, like, oh, yeah, church is cool. Oh, yeah, spirituality is cool. Oh, yeah, I think I want to do this, to, like, nope, this is what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, like, that's sort of like, you know, full moon rising over Badlands while this beautiful song plays in the background. That's kind of a movie moment for me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Did you feel like God is really impacting you there?
Oh, God, yes.
Okay.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
I do not understand your ways, but you know the way for me. And, like, it was that feeling was just directed at
you
God.
could, like, see it around
I could see it around me. I didn't understand what was happening. Like, a year and a half before that, I would have considered myself an agnostic, you know, maybe an atheist. And then I'm sitting here just, like, praying my heart out and, like, whoa.
That's cool. That's really, really cool.
So that's a movie moment.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some others, though. That'd be kind of interesting to hear.
Boy.
Well, I don't want to pry too much, but you were married at one point, right?
I was, as a matter
that
of fact.
That's interesting to talk about? I mean,
yeah, let me, I'm trying to think of a specific, like, the movie moment from that.
I'm sure there was at least, you know, a couple, right? I mean,
yeah, so maybe the movie moment from my marriage, which ended about almost exactly 2 years ago now, was probably me. So I'm sitting in I'm at a conference in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, presenting a paper on The Lord of the Rings. because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings geek.
That is, I didn't know you've been doing it this long.
Yep.
but that is very Tom, yeah.
It's extremely me. And this is April 2014. April. And part of the reason I'm there is because it's en route. I just visited Yale and Harvard Divinity Schools as I'm looking at seminaries.
You ended up turning down at least one of those schools.
I turned both of them down, yep.
Wow, that's pretty interesting and cool. Because, I mean, all right, this school is not nearly as, like, acclaimed as those schools by any means. Like, not even close.
Yeah, not even close. Let's be real for a second. Like, I love PSR and...
So it kind of shows there's some higher goals that he has here than just the critical acclaim. So it's just an interesting thing to know about Tom.
Thanks,
but anyway, yeah, go on.
So I visited and they were lovely, and I knew that I was supposed to come to PSR, like one of those like God moments where you sort of feel it through your whole body. And I'm sitting in the lobby of the hotel stealing Wi-Fi from the Starbucks across the street so that I can check my email and send off the acceptance letter basically to PSR and send off my, I'm sorry Yale, I'm sorry Harvard, I can't come. I'm supposed to go here to PSR. And as I do that, an email comes in, which is like a 5-page single-spaced letter from my wife explaining, like, and I knew that it was sort of on its way to being over, but like the letter was sort of the moment, like this was the moment. This was like, it's done. We aren't together anymore. Like, we need to move on. And so, like, this moment of, like, simultaneously choosing to come to Berkeley and then, like, watching the life that I'd had in South Dakota sort of like, oh, this is very clearly a new chapter.
Right.
So, like, that for me, even though it wouldn't make great, like, film, is really, like, a movie. Like, it was scary almost how clearly or how close those two things were for me.
Right. Yeah, happened at the exact same time. You know, I've had some long-term relationships over the years. You know, I think it does determine a lot about, like, kind of who you become, the way you view things and stuff.
Yeah.
At least for me, it's affected me a lot. I don't really mean to pry, you know, but I'm curious, I guess, you know, like, what was that like for you? I mean, was marriage, like, you know, ecstatic and awesome at certain times? Was it a freaking chore? You know, like, I just wonder about how you think back on it. You know, how long were you guys together for?
We'd known each other, at the time of divorce, we'd known each other 5 years, been together for 4, and 2 of those were married.
So that's a long time. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of, you know, growth and experience and stuff that happened, but yeah, it's, I mean, I guess it's not that cool to talk about your, you know, like, I probably do more than, it's maybe something I'm self-conscious of, you know, because you know, I'll talk, be like, oh yeah, me and my ex-girlfriend did blah, 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 you know, and it's like, nobody wants to hear that, John, you know, shut up, you know, it's sometimes the way that I feel, but I never hear you really talking about that. I'm just kind of curious, you know, what role, you know, that you feel like that's played in your formation and how you think back on those things.
I mean, so to give sort of a short answer, like, it was really hard at the time, the end of it was really hard. The experience of being in a marriage was, you know, it was weird, John, because we got married. We weren't necessarily going to get married as early as we did in the relationship, but Tanisha's my ex-wife's name, her father passed away unexpectedly 3 days before she was set to come home from studying abroad in Europe. And when she came back, the day she got back from Europe, her mom got re-diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, man.
And so, like, we were very conscious that her mom didn't have that long to live, and she and her mom were best friends, basically. And so we sort of decided, well, we were thinking about getting married at some point anyway, so why don't we do it so that your mom can be there? And her mom went through chemo, and it looked good. It looked like she was getting better and that it was going into remission. And then they found, like, in November 2011, they found that it had metastasized to her brain, and within like a week and a half, she was dead.
Holy crap!
Right, and that was like literally 2 weeks before our wedding date.
Oh man, really? Wow, that's crazy, man.
So this experience of her losing her parents sort of hung over our entire relationship,
right?
As married couple,
wow,
which was bonkers. It made it really hard. Like the 6 months after that, you know, she was. I mean, really, for the 2 years we were together after that, she was not the same person. you know, and that's of course not, because you're in grief and you're in shock and you're traumatized. And so like figuring that out, and we were 21, 22 when we got married, you know, like young people. And so I think we just hadn't, especially in the wake of a huge life change like that, like it was probably in a really important sense too early. Like we should have either given it longer or, you know, not gotten married at all. And so the marriage was probably harder than the relationship was overall. I mean, I still love her. Tanisha and I talk almost every day still. Like we're super good friends.
That's really cool.
But she was both the person who first told me to go to church, and she's non-religious. Right. She's not a Christian. She doesn't belong to any specific faith tradition. She would describe herself as spiritual.
I've seen her on Facebook. She seems really weird.
She
looks like a beautiful, amazing person, but also really weird.
Woo as hell. Woo as hell.
Oh, no offense if you end up watching.
I was married to her. I love her, but woo. Woo. She's woo as hell. And she when I was first having my like first existential crisis about like I don't know what I'm looking for. I think it's something bigger. She was like, "Have you thought about going to church?" Like she was the one who said you should go to church.
That's interesting.
And I did, and that changed my life. And then she was also the first person to tell me I should go into the ministry.
Wow.
Like I was talking about how much I loved leading worship, and I started leading Taizé style worship at my undergrad. And she was like, "Well, have you ever thought about becoming a minister?" And like I'm like, no, but I guess I will now. So like she played a huge part in getting me to where I am now, so I'm really thankful for the experience. It taught me a lot about how to deal with grief and how to like be with a person and not be with a person when they're grieving. How to not need to fix everything.
Not to come up to them after they mess up their flute solo. And sorry, different thing.
But I mean, I think it's relevant, right? Like just to give people the space to feel what they need to feel, right?
Right.
And I would never have learned that if I hadn't gone through that experience. So I'm really thankful for it. It was painful, but like, you know, a lot of things in life are, and I think we don't learn it. We can't learn the lesson until we've actually had the experience. I think it's a really important way.
That's super legit. Otherwise, we're just whitewashed tombs or whatever, right? You know,
right.
I totally agree with that. Actually, just go and make the mistakes.
Don't make the mistakes. Yeah. Repent. God will love you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, all right. I think I've got about 2 more sets of questions in mind, which is good. We can go till 7, probably,
cool.
right?
Yeah, rock and roll.
So, so if you're going to answer the world's problems, how are you going to go about doing this?
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to eat this food.
You eat that food while I think about how on earth I'm going to answer that question.
All right. You take plenty of time because we can always cut it. You know?
We can always edit it down.
Yeah.
Boy. I think... So, like, here's something I learned working on Indian reservations, is that, like, you can talk... So Indian reservations are the victims of incredible systemic injustice. Poverty and racism and history of imperialism and all the... I mean, you know, it's like... You want to talk about oppressed communities. These are some of the most oppressed communities, probably the most oppressed communities in some really important way in the United States, and have been for literally centuries. And in the face of that kind of, you know, whether it's climate change or economic injustice or racism, like, it's easy to get immobilized by the scale and the size of it. Like when you're on Pine Ridge and you're looking at, you know, like literally the poorest country in the United States, it's easy to get immobilized by that. And like, well, I can't do anything. Nobody can fix this. And what working there taught me was to foreground like human relationships. So like, I think there's 2 ways to dehumanize people. One is to treat them as if they're, Let me dial back. So I think one way to dehumanize people is to like hold that they're bad, right? To be a racist, to be a classist, to be prejudiced against them, or to support systems that disenfranchise them. Another way, though, is to treat them as as a problem community to be solved. You know what I mean? Or like
That's a good point.
You're not meeting them as people. And what my Lakota friends and the people on the res taught me is like start with relationship. Like, you don't know people until you've lived here 10 years, man. Like, I mean, that's kind of the approach on the res is like, you don't know shit until you've lived here for 10 years. And even then, as a white person, you don't really know what's going on, but you start with eating with people, praying with people, working together with people, right? Like,
do you think they're right about that? Or?
I think they're right on.
Okay.
I think they're absolutely right on.
Just checking.
I think if anybody's going to save the world, it's going to be the Lakota, man. Like,
that's interesting.
And it's, in some ways, it's really, I mean, I think Jesus was this way too, though. It's sort of like, it's not, in some really important sense, it's not systemic thinking. In some really important sense, it's not like social change thinking. It's about how do we foreground human relationships? How do we foreground relationships with one another and with God and with land? And so when I think about how am I going to face the world's problems, I can't fix all of it. Right? I don't think humans can probably, in some really important way, like human beings can't fix all the world's problems. We need an incredible change in consciousness and activity in order to reverse climate change, for instance. So what are we going to do faced with that fact? Okay, well, we're going to try to build communities and relationships where people feel valued, where we live sustainably, where we live in love, where we're intentional about the way that we are with one another, across lines of class or gender or, sexuality or race or whatever it might be. And so I see my job as being really about being a community builder. And like a community builder and an artist. And I see those things as sort of two sides of the same coin, insofar as they're about like sort of showing us, here's who we are, here's who we can be. Let's choose to live into who we can be together, right? And that may seem really provincial and narrow.
Sorry, it took me a second on that. Yeah.
It may seem really narrow and provincial to think about, well, I want to found a community, or I want to like try to build the best seminary community that I can. But I think you have to start at that level, because trying to tackle things on a macro level is both disheartening and in some really important sense, like human beings aren't made for that kind of work.
All of the macro problems are made of people, so.
Yeah, and you have to be aware of that. I think that being aware of systemic injustice and the way that like capitalism works, for instance, is like deeply important, so that when you try to do the work of building human relationships, you don't just reproduce shitty ways of being in the world. Like, that's important to me, and I think that's something you need to be able to be aware of. And like Jesus ate with people, healed people, sat at table with people, talked with people. Jesus was person first, you know what I mean? And so when I think about how to change the world, I think you have to start there. And there are lots of ways to do that. You can do that being an activist. You can do that, I would hope you could do it being an elected official. It doesn't look like it in our political climate right freaking now. But
yeah.
I have dreams, man. I have dreams.
Yeah, so a boy can hope, yeah.
One can hope.
That's awesome. That's a really great answer. That was as good an answer as I could have hoped for.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, that was really great. 4 minutes. All right. So one more question.
Sure.
It's a really short question,
Go
so
on.
I think we're pretty much almost there. Did you have a blankie when you were a kid?
I didn't have a blankie, but I had a Winnie the Pooh bear.
Oh, is it Winnie the Pooh? What did you call it?
Pooh.
Pooh?
Yeah.
When did you get it?
My first Christmas.
Your first, when you were 1 year old?
When I was 0 years old.
0 years old.
So I mean, it was 6 months or something, right? Like.
Yeah. And how long did you have it for?
I still got it.
Really?
You
got it over there?
Yeah, he's beat the hell up, but he's still kicking.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome. Do you love that Pooh Bear?
Oh yes, I would be deeply disappointed if he were to go missing or to fall apart.
That's what it's all about, man. That's awesome. That's really awesome. Awesome
Rock
interview.
and roll, brother.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh yeah, thanks for. This is actually really fun.
It was fun, yeah.
We don't get asked these kinds of questions about ourselves very often. Like what was your experience of divorce like, or what are your goals like? So it's really cool, I think, to have an opportunity to just sit down, even if it is for like the structure of like we're going to record it or whatever, right? Like just to sit down and be able to talk about it. It's cool. It's
kind of weird to think how much time I've wasted talking to you, or like I could know deep things about Tom, right? But instead I was like, well, we've sat and talked for 2 years with me just making some puns,
I'm the same way, dude. Believe me.
So it's interesting, yeah.
I should interview you in return.
Sure.
We should trade mics next time.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. Awesome. Thank you.
Rock and roll, brother.
Yes, so thank you for tuning in, everyone at home. We'll see you next time.